Hello everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel. I'm 24 years old, and I grew up in a small town in Colombia. Today, people are often surprised when they hear me speak English. Some even ask if I studied abroad or spent years living in the United States. The truth is much simpler. Just 3 months before everything changed, I could barely introduce myself in English. If someone asked me a simple question, I froze. My mind went completely blank. I knew a few grammar rules from school, but I couldn't use them in a real conversation. If you're watching this because you feel stuck, embarrassed, or frustrated with your English, I want you to know something. I've been exactly where you are. I know what it feels like to spend months studying vocabulary, only to forget it a few days later. I know what it's like to understand English while watching a video, but suddenly lose every word when it's your turn to speak. I even thought maybe I just wasn't talented enough to learn another language. But I was wrong. What changed my life wasn't a secret course or an expensive teacher. It wasn't magic, and it definitely wasn't luck. It was a simple system, practiced every single day with consistency and patience. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share the exact journey that helped me become confident in English in just 3 months. If you stay until the end, you'll discover the same methods that completely transformed my life. My journey didn't begin with excitement or motivation. It started with one of the most embarrassing days I've ever experienced. Ever since I graduated from university, I dreamed of working for an international marketing company. I spent years improving my technical skills. I attended workshops, earned certificates, and built an impressive portfolio. Finally, one morning, I received an email that made my heart race. Congratulations! We would like to invite you to the final online interview. I couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. I imagined working with people from different countries, earning a better salary, helping my family financially, and building the future I had always dreamed about. For the next few days, I prepared for every possible interview question. I reviewed my experience, practiced my answers, and even chose the clothes I would wear during the video call. I thought I was completely ready. Then the interview began. As soon as I joined the meeting, 3 smiling interviewers greeted me in English. "Good morning, Daniel. How are you today?" I understood the words, but before I could answer, they continued speaking naturally. Their sentences sounded so fast that everything blended together. Instead of understanding ideas, all I heard were unfamiliar sounds rushing past my ears. Then came the first question. "Daniel, could you tell us a little about yourself and explain why you'd like to join our company?" I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I had practiced this answer many times in my native language, but when I opened my mouth, nothing came out the way I had planned. My name, Daniel. I work, marketing. I have experience, and I like your company very much. Silence filled the meeting. One interviewer smiled politely while another nodded, trying to encourage me to continue. My hands started shaking. I could feel my heart beating faster and faster. They asked another question. This time, I understood only half of it. Instead of asking them to repeat it, I guessed. My answer made no sense. A few minutes later, one interviewer thanked me for my time and said they would contact me after reviewing all the candidates. Deep inside, I already knew the truth. The interview was over before I'd even shown what I was capable of. A week later, the email arrived. "We appreciate your interest. Unfortunately, we have decided to move forward with another candidate. I stared at the screen for several minutes without saying a single word. I wasn't rejected because I lacked knowledge or experience. I was rejected because I couldn't communicate. That realization hurt more than any failure I had ever experienced. That evening, I sat alone in my room and asked myself one simple question. What if English isn't just another subject? What if it's the bridge between the life I have today and the life I've always wanted? At that moment, I made a promise to myself. For the next 3 months, I would treat learning English like my most important job. No excuses, no skipping days, no waiting for motivation. I didn't know it then, but that single decision was about to change everything. The very next morning, I grabbed a notebook and wrote one sentence at the top of the first page. For the next 90 days, I will practice English every single day. It wasn't a goal. It was a promise. I stopped searching for shortcuts and miracle methods. I knew that if I wanted different results, I had to change the way I learned. The first thing I did was surprisingly simple. I completely stopped memorizing long vocabulary lists. For years, I had believed that learning more words would make me fluent. My phone was full of vocabulary apps, and my notebook contained hundreds of words with translations. But when someone spoke to me in English, I still couldn't hold a conversation. That's when I realized something important. The problem wasn't that I knew too few words. The problem was that I didn't know how to use the words I already knew. So instead of learning 50 new words every day, I focused on 50 useful sentences that people actually use in real life. Every morning after waking up, I read those sentences aloud again and again. Good morning. Could you repeat that, please? I'm still learning English. What do you mean? That sounds interesting. I'd like a cup of coffee. At first, it felt strange. My pronunciation wasn't great, and sometimes I stumbled over simple words. But I kept repeating them until they started to feel natural. Then I added another habit that completely changed my confidence. I started talking to myself. Whenever I was alone, I described everything I was doing in English. While making breakfast, I would say, I'm cutting some bread. Now I'm making coffee. The coffee smells really good today. While walking outside, I described the streets, the weather, the people, and even the cars passing by. Sometimes I made mistakes, a lot of mistakes, but there was nobody around to judge me. Little by little, my brain stopped depending on translation. Instead of thinking in my native language first, simple English words began appearing naturally. Another habit became part of my daily routine. Every evening, I watched short English videos, never longer than 5 minutes. But I didn't watch them for entertainment. I watched them like a student. Whenever I heard a sentence I liked, I paused the video and repeated it exactly as the speaker said it. I copied the pronunciation, the rhythm, the emotion, and even the pauses. Sometimes I repeated the same sentence 20 times. It was slow. It was repetitive. But every repetition made my mouth a little more comfortable with English sounds. After 2 weeks, something unexpected happened. While watching a video, I understood an entire conversation without looking at subtitles. It wasn't perfect. I still missed many words. But for the first time, I understood the main idea without translating every sentence. That small victory gave me enormous confidence. By the end of the first month, I wasn't fluent. I still made grammar mistakes. I still searched for words from time to time. But something inside me had changed. English no longer felt like an impossible mountain. It finally felt like a skill I could build one day at a time. And that was the moment I realized I was ready for the next challenge. It was time to stop practicing alone and start using English in real conversations. The second month was completely different from the first. During the first 30 days, I had built a strong foundation. I could understand simple conversations, speak basic sentences, and think in English more often. But I knew that wasn't enough. My goal wasn't just to understand English. It was to speak it confidently with real people. There was only one problem. I was still afraid. Every time I thought about speaking to someone in English, I imagined making mistakes. I worried they would laugh at my accent or think my English was terrible. That fear kept me silent. Then one evening, I asked myself a simple question. How can I become a confident speaker if I never actually speak? That question changed everything. The very next day, I joined a free online language exchange community. People from all over the world met there to practice English together. Some were beginners, while others were already quite fluent. I was nervous before joining my first conversation. My finger hovered over the Join Meeting button for almost 2 minutes. Finally, I took a deep breath and clicked. There were 6 people in the room from different countries. One by one, everyone introduced themselves. When it was my turn, my heart was beating so fast that I thought everyone could hear it. My name is Daniel. I'm from Colombia. I'm learning English because I want to work internationally. It wasn't a perfect introduction. I made a few grammar mistakes. I spoke slowly. But something amazing happened. Nobody laughed. Instead, everyone smiled. One participant even said, "Your English is good, just keep practicing." Those simple words gave me confidence I had never felt before. From that day on, I made a new rule. I would speak English with someone every single day, even if it was only for 15 minutes. Some conversations were easy, others were awkward. Sometimes I couldn't remember simple words, so I explained them in another way. For example, one day I forgot the word umbrella. Instead of stopping, I said, "It's the thing you use when it rains." Everyone understood me. That taught me an important lesson. Fluent speakers don't know every word. They know how to keep communicating. At the same time, I changed the way I learned new vocabulary. Instead of memorizing random words, I learned expressions and phrases. For example, instead of learning only the word excited, I learned sentences like, "I'm really excited about my new job." "I'm excited to meet new people." "I'm excited for the future." Learning words inside complete sentences made them much easier to remember. Every night before sleeping, I also wrote a short diary in English. At first, it was only 5 or 6 sentences. Today, I studied English for 2 hours. I talked with a new friend online. I learned some useful expressions. As the days passed, my diary became longer. Without realizing it, I was practicing grammar, vocabulary, and writing every single day. Then came one unforgettable moment. About 7 weeks after I started my journey, I was watching an English interview on YouTube. Halfway through the video, I suddenly realized something. I wasn't translating anymore. I was simply listening and understanding. I paused the video and smiled. It was the first time English felt natural instead of difficult. That moment showed me that real progress often happens quietly. You don't notice it day by day. But one day, you look back and realize you've come much farther than you ever imagined. By the end of the second month, I could hold conversations for 20 or 30 minutes without feeling nervous. I still made mistakes, but they no longer stopped me. Every conversation made me stronger. Every mistake became a lesson, and every day brought me one step closer to the confident English speaker I wanted to become. I knew the final month would be my biggest challenge. It was time to stop thinking like an English learner and start thinking like someone who actually lived in English. When the third month began, I made a decision that sounded crazy to my friends. I would stop treating English as a subject. From that day forward, English would become part of my daily life. Instead of studying English for 1 or 2 hours, I started living with it from the moment I woke up until I went to bed. The first thing I did every morning was check the news in English. I listened to short podcasts while making breakfast, watched YouTube videos during lunch, and read simple articles before going to sleep. Even my phone and laptop were set to English. At first, it felt overwhelming. There were many words I didn't understand, but instead of stopping every few seconds to look up a dictionary, I focused on understanding the main idea. Surprisingly, my brain began connecting words with situations instead of translations. One habit became my secret weapon. Whenever I learned a new expression, I challenged myself to use it 3 times that same day. If I learned the phrase looking forward to, I would immediately create sentences. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I'm looking forward to meeting my friends. I'm looking forward to improving my English. Using new phrases in real situations helped me remember them naturally. Another thing I changed was my attitude toward grammar. Before, I spent hours reading grammar rules without knowing how to apply them. Now I learned grammar by paying attention to real conversations. Whenever I heard native speakers use an interesting sentence, I wrote it down exactly as they said it. Then I created similar sentences with the same structure. Little by little, grammar stopped feeling like a collection of complicated rules. It became a pattern my brain started recognizing automatically. I also continued speaking with people online almost every evening. This time, I challenged myself to discuss more difficult topics. We talked about travel, technology, education, sports, and even our dreams for the future. Some conversations lasted nearly an hour. There were still moments when I forgot words. But instead of freezing, I stayed calm and explained my ideas differently. To my surprise, people understood me almost every time. That experience taught me another valuable lesson. Communication is not about speaking perfect English. It's about helping people understand your message. Around the middle of the third month, something happened that completely surprised me. A tourist stopped me on the street and asked for directions in English. 3 months earlier, I would have panicked. This time, I smiled. I carefully explained which bus to take, where to get off, and how long the journey would be. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but after the tourist thanked me and walked away, I stood there smiling. For the first time in my life, I had helped a complete stranger using only English. That simple conversation meant more to me than any exam score. A few days later, I decided to test myself one final time. I joined an online discussion with several native English speakers. At first, I felt nervous, but after the conversation began, something incredible happened. I wasn't translating. I wasn't searching for every word. I was simply listening, thinking, and responding naturally. People laughed at my jokes. They asked for my opinion. They agreed with my ideas. By the end of the meeting, One participant said something I'll never forget. "Daniel, your English is really clear. How long have you been studying?" I smiled and answered honestly. "Only 3 months, but I practiced every single day." At that moment, I realized my biggest victory wasn't sounding like a native speaker. My biggest victory was no longer being afraid to speak. The fear that once controlled me had disappeared. Now there was only one thing left to do. It was time to return to the company that had once rejected me and find out whether all my hard work had truly changed my future. 3 months earlier, I had closed my laptop after that failed interview feeling completely defeated. I still remember that moment clearly. The silence after my broken answers. The feeling of knowing I had the skills but couldn't express myself. The email saying they had chosen another candidate. For a long time, that memory was painful. But now, I looked at it differently. That failure was the reason I changed. It pushed me to become someone I never thought I could become. So I decided to apply for the same position again. Some people around me asked, "Are you sure you want to try again? What if the result is the same?" But deep inside, I knew something was different. 3 months ago, I was afraid of English. Now English was a tool I could use. I wasn't expecting perfection. I wasn't expecting to speak like a native speaker. I just wanted to show my real abilities without language stopping me. A few days after sending my application, I received an email. "Congratulations. We would like to invite you for another interview." When I read those words, I smiled. The same company, the same opportunity, but a completely different person. On the day of the interview, I sat in front of my computer and waited for the meeting to begin. The interviewers appeared on the screen. "Hello, Daniel. It's great to see you again." I smiled and replied confidently. "Thank you for giving me another opportunity. I'm happy to be here." The interview started. This time, I understood every question. I explained my experience clearly. I talked about my projects. I shared my ideas. When I didn't know a word, I didn't panic. I simply explained my thoughts in another way. The person sitting in front of me was the same Daniel who had failed 3 months earlier. But my confidence was completely different. After the interview ended, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Regardless of the result, I already knew I had won. I had defeated the fear that once controlled me. A few days later, my phone rang. It was the company. "Daniel, we are happy to inform you that you have been selected for the position." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The opportunity I had lost because of English was finally mine. I looked back at my journey and realized something important. Learning English was never only about language. It was about confidence. It was about opening doors. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of achieving something difficult. Now I want to share the biggest lessons I learned during those 3 months. First, stop waiting until you are perfect. Many people spend years studying English because they are afraid of making mistakes. But mistakes are not signs of failure. Mistakes are proof that you are practicing. Second, make English part of your daily life. Don't only study from books. Listen to English, speak English, write English, think in English. The more your brain experiences the language, the faster you improve. Third, focus on communication, not perfection. Even native speakers make mistakes sometimes. The goal is not to speak perfect English. The goal is to express yourself clearly and confidently. Fourth, consistency is more powerful than motivation. You don't need to study 10 hours every day. You need to practice every day. 30 minutes daily for months is better than studying for 5 hours once a week. Finally, Believe that change is possible. 3 months before my success, I was the person who couldn't answer a simple interview question. I was the person who thought English was impossible. But with the right habits and daily effort, everything changed. If you are watching this video and you feel stuck with your English, remember my story. Your current level does not decide your future. The only thing that matters is what you do starting today. Speak even if your voice shakes. Practice even if you make mistakes. Learn even if progress feels slow. One day, you will look back and realize that every small effort was building the person you wanted to become. Your English journey doesn't start when you become confident. Your confidence starts when you begin your journey. So start today. Because 3 months from now, you could be a completely different person.